Welcome back to The Realist, everybody, the only part of the timeline you actually look forward to. I'm your host, Shanghai Pete, the People's Champion, and your very good buddy in the mix. Just a quick little mini episode today because, well, Sony's State of Play just dropped, and as you may expect, I've got some shit to say about it, namely one game in particular. So, join us, friends, as we once again dance madly on the edge of the volcano and get deep inside the sordid, steamy belly of the foul gaming industry. Alright, let's get the boring stuff out of the way. Spider-Man Remastered for PC. Great, I guess. Glad more games are coming to the PC, but like, how many of the exact same Spider-Man game y'all want me to play? Hard pass on this. Next, we've got a major update trailer for Horizon Forbidden West. Snore. Sorry guys, you got outplayed by Elden Ring. It just is what it is. It's not even like Forbidden West was necessarily bad. It just wasn't nearly as good as Elden Ring, and at the time, unfortunately for Sony, that's all that mattered. We're not even going to dignify Horizon Call of the Mountain with any commentary. It's a gimmick, just like all other VR garbage for the most part. End of story. If it turns out to be otherwise, I'll gladly eat my proverbial hat. I, of course, would prefer that VR be something cool and more than a gimmick, but right now it's really not. Sorry. Moving on, looks like a new trailer for the Dead Space remake dropped, but they're calling it the Callisto Protocol now for some reason. A dumb name, but in all seriousness, if there's even a competent survival horror game somewhere in there, I'm definitely here for it. Sci-fi horror is my favorite shit, so I'm down for any excuse to fuck with some of that. You just gotta offer me a slightly decent game. Bullish on this one. Next, we've got some embarrassment called Rollerdrome. I don't know who they expect to actually play this, but it sure as fuck is not me. It'll be forgotten about before it even releases. We've also got some action game dating sim hybrid called Eternites. It's also a fucking stupid name. I'm not even sure what I'm looking at here, because the entire genre action dating sim doesn't sound like a real thing to me. When it comes to anime, if it's not like old episodes of Evangelion or Boogie Pop fandom, you can miss me with it. I'm sorry, I'm just not cool enough to be caught up with Tokyo Ghoul or whatever else the people are watching now. We've also got Resident Evil Village for PSVR, so if all the Rule 34 mods out there aren't enough for you, you can wedge yourself even further deep inside with this. Hooray. Street Fighter 6 seems like it's also failing to really impress anyone. The resident fighting game expert over here at Degreelessness took one look at it and said simply, looks like a Chinese mobile game. And seeing as I haven't played a Street Fighter game since 2 Turbo on Super Nintendo, I'm gonna have to go ahead and agree with his take on this. We've also got Tunic, which I've actually played on PC. This is a great little Zelda clone where you play as a super cute fox. Lots to love here. Fun action, puzzles, gorgeous creative graphic style, and utterly brilliant music. Very ethereal, very chill. Definitely recommend this one. Props to Sony for getting it on their platform. Next, we have Season, which, if I'm being honest, and I always am, I don't really get. Like, it's like if the term pretentious was a gameplay mechanic. Not sure how this is supposed to be fun. It looks like someone's art school final, and I went to art school. I would know. I've seen a lot of them. Whether or not that sounds like a good thing, I'll leave up to you. Rounding out this bunch is, of course, everyone's favorite cyberpunk cat game, Stray. Not much more to say about this. It continues to look awesome. Please come out so I can play you. And also, maybe, be good as well. That would be nice too. And sadly, we now come to Final Fantasy 16. The title card here really shows you everything you need to know about this game and ensures that you waste no time actually being excited. In a world ruled by tyranny and turmoil, there are those who would fight to take back control of their fate. Oh god. Gee, if I hadn't seen the 16 on the video title, I'd have no idea what game this is from. This literally could be any Final Fantasy game from the past like 30 years. No one hurt themselves thinking this up, that's for sure. Final Fantasy, the series that basically coined the Save the Crystal trope, has never been what you'd call overly innovative, but like come the fuck on, guys. Maybe it was the FF7 remake, maybe it was the empty and unfulfilling world of FF15, or the impenetrable nonsense of the story from FF13, but like, dude, Final Fantasy, it just looks increasingly worse to me. Like, I don't know what to say. Every time, man, the flash over substance just ad nauseum needs to fucking end. There is absolutely nothing here that even gave me a semi-chub or the merest flicker of excitement. Dude, it's all so trite and banal. Like, I can't take it to see my boy like this. What are you guys doing? It takes more than Shiva the size of a building and diamond dust rendered with increasingly larger poly counts to make a good Final Fantasy. How is it possible you guys haven't figured that out yet? It's made even more bizarre by how dope FF14 is. Like, you guys just not talk to that team at all? Like, what's going on? This trailer, like all the ones prior, has told me basically nothing about this game, other than that they're continuing to persist with turning Final Fantasy into a subpar action game, which I fucking hate. There's some people would say that's inevitable. I don't know if I believe that. Guys, stop trying to make Devil May Cry, for fuck's sake, please. I do not want the shitty parts of a third-person action game combined with the confusing ambiguity of a poorly developed JRPG story instead of Final Fantasy. Who told you to do that? No one asked you to do that. What even is this? God damn it. It's so disappointing, geez. And always, in fairness, it's not because this doesn't look impressive. Of course it looks fucking impressive, but it's spectacle porn and barely anything else. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is just, I want Final Fantasy again. I do not want Devil May Cry with fucking Phoenix Downs, okay? We're not completely writing this one off by any means, but my hype level is officially at 0. Moving on, it's time for the star of the show, the Resident Evil 4 remake. You didn't want it, but here it is anyway. After all, Capcom has never let something as trivial as what their customers actually want stand in the way of them getting theirs, so why should it now? Truth be told, remarkably, there's more nuance to this than you might expect. So if you were hoping I'd just unilaterally hate on this all across the board, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to disappoint you. There will be quite a lot of hating and ranting, not to worry, but just warning you now, it's not all gonna be negative. Well, probably not. To begin, it needs to be said, and let's just get it out of the way. I know it may be uncomfortable to hear, but this might be good. I know I'm a horrible shill, but you gotta hear it. Just look at the facts. Over the last 5 years, Capcom has released Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 8 Village. Aside from the obvious catastrophe of the RE3 Remake, those were all bangers. We could, of course, get into the back and forth of whether or not they were truly Resident Evil games in the spirit of the franchise, or how thematically faithful they may or may not have been, and a dozen other arguments that at another time might be fun to have, but for the purpose of brevity and my sanity, we're just all going to have to agree that whether they met with the particulars of your personal taste or not, 7, 2 Remake, and 8 were very good games, objectively. And I point this out because, though I'm loath to admit it, the reality is that the people making Resident Evil right now are clearly quite capable of making a good game when they decide that's what they want to do, or when the board at Capcom decides that's what they want to let them do. I'm not sure which it is, to be honest. So we've got a team that's demonstrated that they're capable of making a good Resident Evil game, plus the news that those people are working on a remake of Resident Evil 4, one of the most important, if not best, games of the entire franchise. What could possibly go wrong? Fucking plenty, unfortunately. First reason to be worried. Why? Among the first questions that needs to be asked whenever it comes to almost any remake is why. It's the fundamental inquiry that we must make. Why do we need a remake of Final Fantasy VII? Why does Half-Life need Black Mesa? Why did Diablo 2 need a remake? For that matter, why did anyone need Warcraft 3 Reforged? Now, of course, the ultimate reason any of those projects were greenlighted was because of money, obviously. So the question then isn't, was it just a cash grab, because they all were, but how much was motivated by the opportunity for a cash grab, and how much by people who really just wanted to make a cool, newer version of the game? The answer typically is in the results. So, you look at FF7, Warcraft 3 Reforged, clearly almost entirely about the money. Diablo 2, slightly less so, and Black Mesa, probably barely at all. It started off as a fan project. So, what about Resident Evil 4? Why do we need another one of those? Was Resident Evil 4 perhaps a brilliant concept with a disastrously flawed execution desperately deserving of a second shot? No. Was it perhaps an unimpeachable classic but tragically left behind by modern hardware? Nope, there's a version of RE4 you can get for pretty much every major platform right now. Was it maybe a great game that sadly has just gotten too damn old? No, they just released another version of it on Switch like last year. Okay, so Resident Evil 4 is a game that executed its concept well, sold incredibly well, continues to sell well, has a thriving mod scene that's available on modern platforms, and to this very day is still moving copies of its original version. Why then do we need a remake? Well, the answer is simple. We don't. Second reason to be worried. length. The original RE4 is a long-ass motherfucker. It's common for casual playthroughs to easily hit the 20-hour mark. And what do we know about modern devs? Do they seem to like making longer games? Doubt. They've got lots of real nice toys, but man, they really seem to hate using them. So many modern games seem to actively reject the idea of being anything beyond like 15 hours or so if they aren't like a strict RPG. Is our attention span that fucked? I think I managed to drag out my first playthrough of Village to like maybe 13 hours. You can barely get 10 out of RE7, probably about the same or a little less from RE2. I bet you couldn't even get 5 from RE3. I mean, fuck, look at Final Fantasy VII. Originally a roughly 40-hour game, the devs could barely bother to fit the first 4 hours into the remake and couldn't be fucked to even explain themselves. Just here, take this, buy it, and like it. And by the way, shut the fuck up also. How sure are we that Capcom's attitude to this, especially in light of RE3, is going to be much different? Do we really think they're going to bother fitting the entire game into just one release if they feel they don't have to? Are we possibly looking at a Resident Evil 4 Remake Part 1? And if they do that, do we really think that they'll care enough to even bother making a second part? Square Enix so far has not made a second part of FF7 Remake, and it's been years. No, it's far more likely that they'll just hack out whole chunks of the game in order to cut down its length and dev time. The last thing that I fucking want is Resident Evil 4 the Abridged Edition. And you know that's what they're gonna fucking do, geez. You know it. I'm calling it now. No fucking shot they put every single chapter in its full length in here. No shot. And that naturally brings us to reason number 3 to be terrified. Authenticity. Let's be real here, as well done as RE7 and 8 were, I think it's safe to say that it's somewhat of a minor miracle that the RE2 remake was as good as it was, especially when you take a look at what happened when they tried to do it again. It's one thing to make a new game completely from scratch, throw a few $100 million at it, add in a couple hundred overworked devs, bicky bam, you got something halfway decent. But to go back in and redo something that's already known, obsessed over, and beloved by millions of people and not actively fuck it up, it's quite another thing entirely. It's risky, and as we know, corpos hate risk. Why else do you think Square Enix wanted to make sure they got multiple shots at the FF7 remake? And the RE2 remake team has the advantage of their source material being a gooey mess of pre-21st century pixelated jello. Now, as good as that jello was, its age admittedly made it much easier for that team to make up their own stuff in some areas, take a little creative license with others, maybe reimagine a few scenes here and there, etc. That's going to be much harder to do with a game you can easily side by side right now. And frankly, I don't know if the same people that brought us the trash fire and trophy winning example of dev laziness that was the RE3 remake are the ones to pull that off with the same degree of success. RE4 is not a game that suffers from aging shitty controls, or a horribly embarrassing engine, or sloppy texture work, or flawed design, or any number of the improvements that would have immediately been obviously needed for the original RE2 to anyone who looked at even 10 minutes of it. My point is that finding stuff to improve upon in RE2, it's relatively easy. What do you improve about RE4? Now, I'm sure that if we wanted to take a few hours, we could come up with a bunch of minutia that could stand some improvement, but that's kind of my point. Overall, that game doesn't need much, and if you go in there trying to fuck around with it, it's way more likely that you're just gonna fuck it up than improve it in any way. That's why the idea of a bunch of new school yuppies getting all up in its guts should probably scare the fuck out of you. My knee-jerk reaction to that kind of stuff is always gonna be, please stay the fuck back. Alright, just hands off the classic. Please. You guys don't know what you're doing. Put the RE4 down and back slowly away. Now, we do always have to be fair though, and in fairness, the trailer, I mean, it looked pretty fucking dope, not gonna lie, shit was cold as fuck. No argument there, and I join many of you in desperately hoping that this turns out to be good. However, it's just gonna take a lot more than some recycled IP and some shots of Leon S. Kennedy to get me slobbing on the old corpo knob again. A good start would be actual gameplay footage, a guarantee of no-cut content, maybe a promise that it'll be a single release in one package, and maybe, if the corpos are feeling super extra nice, a statement on no microtransactions or bullshit paywalled online content? But us peasants would probably have to be very well behaved indeed to deserve that kind of special treatment from our betters in the corporate institution, isn't that right? Imagine simply asking for the bare minimum. Insanity, I know. Anyways, it's your masterpiece to fuck up, Capcom. Just try real hard not to ruin it too badly, would you? Hey, look at that. I did spend most of this video shitting on this. How about that? And lastly, just as a final thought here, I feel it's necessary, and my duty even, to point out that all this could just be avoided if you motherfuckers would just remake Code Veronica instead.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down.